I'm here at Fort Morris, Georgia, and this is Fort Morris was erected at the beginning of the Revolutionary War to guard the port of Sunbury and St. John's Parish. Fort Morris was an enclosed earthwork in the shape of an irregular quadrangle surrounded by a parapet and moat. It contained a parade of about an acre. The fort was defended by more than 25 pieces of ordnance of varied size. It was named in honor of Captain Morris, who commanded the company of artillery by which it was first garrisoned early in 1776. Colonel John McIntosh commanded the garrison on November 25th, 1778, when Colonel L.V. Foozer, with 500 British ground troops, supported by armed ships in the Medway River, landed at Sunbury and demanded the immediate surrender of Fort Morris. Colonel McIntosh, with 127 Continental troops, some militia, and citizens of Sunbury, less than 200 men in all, replied, "Come and take it." The enemy retreated to the south, and Continental troops held Fort Morris until January 9, 1779, when it was captured by British forces. This is the first place that I'm adding to my documentary. There are going to be more. So I'm over here walking up to what seems like and appears to be maybe a place where somebody used to be a blacksmith worked at, possibly. Yeah. It's pretty interesting. Sunbury, Fort Morris. Look at that. That's pretty awesome, ain't it? Look at this. The way they worked back then. Looks on the ground. Yeah, that's how they used to work back then. Out there in nature. It's really cool, this place. Here, I want to walk over here real quick because I seen this when I was searching this place up. And it's supposed to be, well, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I know it has to do with masons. I want to just see. What this was. Yep, here we go. Here we go. Well, I got plenty of things on each side. Solomons Lounge. Let's see. Alright, so here we have the famous Sunbury Masonic Oak. It's pretty cool. It says northeast of this spot stood the famous Sunbury Oak of early colonial Masonic legend. The tree is said to have been of tremendous size and provided an ideal place for safe, comfortable campsites. The legend of the Sunbury Masonic Oak is based on a tradition that has been passed down for generations from the earliest days of the colony of Georgia. There is a strong belief that Georgia's first Masonic meeting was held under the protective branches of the great oak on February 21st, 1734. It is believed that General James Edward Oglethorpe himself presided over the meeting, thus introducing Freemasonry to Georgia. The lodge, which traces its beginning to that important meeting, was the lodge at Savannah in Yee province of Georgia, now known as Solomon's Lodge Number 1, F&AM, the oldest continuously operating English constituted lodge in the Western Hemisphere. Today, the lodge has in its possession a gavel made from the wood of the tree, which was given to it by the family of Sheftall in 1859. Although the original Sunbury oak no longer exists, it retains a special place in the Masonic lore of Georgia. To commemorate and maintain the tradition of the original meeting site of Solomon's Lodge Number 1, we have this day, February 24th, 1990, planted another live oak, the state tree of Georgia. It is our fond hope that it too will reach the majestic proportions of its predecessor. Interesting. All right, so on this side it says, dedicated with Masonic ceremonies, February 24th, 1990, commemorating the 256th anniversary of the first Masonic meeting in Georgia and the founding of Solomon's Lodge Number 1, F&AM. Williams Wright Daniel, most worshipful Grand Master of Masons in Georgia. Stephen Jackson Meir, worshipful Master of Solomon's Lodge Number 1, F&AM of Savannah, Georgia. That's pretty tight, right? All right, on this side is Solomon's Lodge Number 1, F&AM, Savannah, Georgia. Solomon's Lodge Number 1, F&AM, was organized as a Masonic lodge on February 21st, 1734. Masonic tradition holds that its first worshipful master was General James Edward Oglethorpe, English soldier, statesman, humanitarian, and founder of Georgia, who raised the flag of England at Savannah on February 12, 1733. Solomon's Lodge was chartered by the Grand Lodge of England in 1735, making it the second chartered lodge in the Americas. In 1786, the Independent Grand Lodge of Georgia, F&AM, was created and proclaimed by concerted action of Solomon's Lodge and the one other lodge then existing in the states. Solomon's Lodge Number 1 was chartered as the first lodge of Georgia. From its beginning in 1734, brethren of Solomon's Lodge have served with distinction in vital positions of leadership in public and fraternal affairs of city, colony, state, and nation. The lodge produced the first Grand Master of Georgia, F&AM, William Stephens, who governed the Georgia craft from 1786, 1788, and 1793 to 1813. Solomon's Lodge Number 1, F&AM, one of Savannah's greatest historical institutions, is honored and revered by the Freemasons of this state as the Mother Lodge of Georgia, free and accepted Masons.
By 1756, landowner Mark Carr realized settlers in this area needed a place to sell and distribute their commercial goods, as well as a place to share their political and spiritual ideas. Seeing the potential for development, he began selling lots to mercantile firms. A few months later, he received a land grant from King George II, making it official that he had the power to establish a town. Inspired by James Oglethorpe's vision of Savannah, Sunbury was laid out using a grid pattern. 496 lots were arranged around 3 town squares, named Meeting, Kings, and Church. 5 substantial wharves lined the Medway River. Naturalist William Bartram once wrote,
"There are about 100 houses in the town, neatly built of wood frame, having pleasant piazzas around them. The inhabitants are genteel and wealthy, either merchants or planters from the country who resort here in the summer and autumn to partake of the salubrious sea breeze.
During the War of 1812, the United States Navy knew Sunbury's deep harbor would be a target for British warships, so it decided to send armed barges to protect the harbor and patrol the coast. Unfortunately, the mission was doomed from the start. Provisions and trained manpower were hard to find, and the crew's commander literally missed the boat when the expedition set sail. To make matters worse, the town had not been warned of their arrival. When they saw the armed vessels off the coast, the worried militia prepared for battle, and some of the residents fled, while others hid their valuables. It was only after the crews raised the American flag that the town breathed a collective sigh of relief. After their arrival, the situation continued to deteriorate. Officers were inexperienced and unprofessional. Many crew members deserted, supplies dwindled, equipment was lost, and their powder was gone. After 6 months, the mission was scrapped and the barges left. By the time the American Revolution was over and the British had withdrawn their troops, Sunbury was practically destroyed. Over the next few decades, the town managed to regain some of its former prosperity, with the harbor ranking as one of the finest in the state. When the War of 1812 broke out, the people of Sunbury must have had a sense of déjà vu. Once again, the British posed a threat to the harbor and the town. In 1814, construction began on a new fort located on the site of the former Fort Morris. Maps from the period show Fort Defiance's configuration to be a modified star shape. The fort's location on a bluff overlooking the marsh made an attack from the river approaches difficult, if not impossible. A British invasion of Georgia's coast never materialized, and Fort Defiance was still unfinished when the War of 1812 ended with the Treaty of Ghent.
Man, that would, well, you work out a workout trying to learn some stuff sometimes. See, look at that muscles. Muscles got worked out. That's what I use right there, y'all.
To select a message, please press a button. A few miles down the Medway River lies St. Catherine's Island. One of Georgia's barrier islands, it stands as a witness to hundreds of years of human habitation. By the 1500s, Spain dominated the New World, and its leaders sought to expand colonization of the frontier. By 1566, missions were established in what is now Georgia to convert indigenous peoples such as the Wali to Catholicism, while teaching them European customs and skills, all planned to make them productive subjects to the Spanish crown. As a result, Mission Santa Catalina de Wali was founded on St. Catherine's Island. It consisted of a church, residence, cells, workshops, and communal kitchen. Some of the Wali did not support Spanish colonization. Revolts sporadically took place on the island for several decades. By 1680, France and Britain had emerged as rivals to Spain. The British sent forces down from South Carolina to push the Spanish out. Although a small group of Spaniards in Wali held off the attack, St. Catherine's was abandoned soon after. In the 1990s, archaeologists unearthed the remains of the mission. Modern work on the island continues to gather information about this important part of Georgia's history. In the era before trains and airplanes, rivers were the lifelines of commerce. Without navigable rivers and deep-water harbors, the colony and later state of Georgia would not have been able to survive. The ability to trade overseas and with other ports along the coast was so vital that whoever controlled the rivers also held the military advantage. That is why Fort Morris was built on this long bluff overlooking the Medway River and the approaches from St. Catherine's Sound. Notice that the river turns at a right angle just in front of the fort. Any ships approaching Sunbury were forced to slow down and would be easy targets for the fort's artillery. Not to be confused with the nearby town of Medway, Georgia, the Medway River is, in fact, named after a river in southern England. The Medway is 11 miles long and has a natural deep-water channel that flows past the high bluff. Georgia's colonial founders recognized this as a suitable place for a port city. Ships took advantage of its access to St. Catherine's Sound and the Atlantic Ocean, and transported goods and wares to and from Sunbury for years. At one time, Sunbury was Georgia's second busiest seaport behind Savannah. Today, the tidal marshes are still home to scores of natural flora and fauna, and residents as well as visitors continue to use the Medway River for boating, fishing, and shrimping. During the 1700s, St. Catherine's Island was home to two of early Georgia's famous citizens. Mary Musgrove, the daughter of an English trader and Creek Indian mother, is well known. Years of her life, she owned St. Catherine's Island after the settlement of legal dispute over its land rights. Button Gwinnett, signer of the Declaration of Independence, bought the island in 1765 and owned it for a few years prior to the American Revolution. After signing the Declaration of Independence, Gwinnett returned to Georgia, where he died of a wound received in a famous duel with General Lachlan McIntosh. Can you believe Sunbury was once a booming commercial seaport? It was founded in 1758, and by the start of the American Revolution, the town's economy had exploded. The port bustled with vessels carrying timber, rice, corn, and other raw materials up and down the coast from New England to the Caribbean. The town's prosperity was short-lived, however. In 1778 and 1779, British troops occupied the seaport, even using it as a prisoner of war camp. Most of the residents fled, and just a few decades after its founding, the British soldiers burned most of Sunbury, forcing those who remained to rebuild their lives. Chief Justice George Walton remarked,
"The citizens of Liberty County, with others, have drunk deep in the stream of distress. We should not lose sight of the value of the prize we have obtained. And now that we are in full possession of our freedom, we should all unite in our endeavors to benefit and perpetuate the system, that we may always be happy at home and forever freed from the insults of petty tyrants commissioned from abroad."
Sadly, these inspiring words could not save Sunbury from fading into the shadows of time.
Typical earthwork. So yeah, that's it right there. Oh, this is pretty cool. So you can't even really, it says keep off a mound, so you can't really go up anywhere. That's okay, more than meets the eye. Alright, let's see. Although there are no existing structures of Sunbury Fort Morris today, trained archaeologists see something completely different. Archaeological excavations conducted here in the 1970s by Gordon M. Midget, and in 2002 by Southern Research Inc. Daniel T. Elliott, principal investigator, revealed a revolutionary site rich in artifacts and data that gives us a glimpse into a time when this country and state were struggling for survival. This excavation map shows approximately the location of the two main studies of the site. And there's a lot of bugs out here biting me right now. That's pretty cool. Check it out. So yeah, you can't go up there on the mounds. They have signs on the top already. This is what it looks like though. Very simple and easy. Nothing hard at all. The landscape is just out of this world. Let's see where else can I go, because this is not really a big place. Yeah, see. So let's see. Alright, so these are the mounds at Fort Morris. I'll give you a little timeline. I got a sheet over here. It gives me a little timeline of this place. Its timeline is 1747, town of Sunbury is first settled. 1756, construction begins on a small 8-cannon battery on the future site of Fort Morris. Town of Sunbury is charted in 1758. 1760, log fort replaces small battery on future site of Fort Morris. 1776, Continental Congress orders construction of new fort at Sunbury. 1778, in November, British attack town of Sunbury and Fort Morris but are repelled. 1779, in January, British attack fort again and take it. 1779 again, in September, British dismantle fort. 1783, Treaty of Paris ends American Revolution. 1812, fort reconfigured and renamed Fort Defiant during War of 1812. 1861, fort utilized by Confederate troops during Civil War. In 1864, the fort and town of Sunbury taken by U.S. troops. It's pretty interesting. In November 1778, British troops, loyalists, and Native Americans surrounded Sunbury and Fort Morris by land and water. British Lieutenant Colonel Louis Fuser demanded the fort's surrender, to which American Colonel John McIntosh replied, "We, sir, are fighting the Battle of America." As to surrendering, the fort received this laconic reply, "Come and take it." Fuser's troops withdrew but laid waste to the surrounding countryside. Sunbury's reprieve was short-lived after the British took Savannah the following month. British Major General Augustine Prevost launched an attack on Fort Morris when American Major Joseph Lane refused to surrender. Prevost turned the full force of his artillery on the fort and bombarded it into submission on January 9, 1779. The British imprisoned American officers in Sunbury and occupied the fort until September, when they left it in ruins. So this was my trip to Sunbury. This was my trip to Fort Morris. My trip to Fort Morris, of course, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I learned a little bit of it, about it. Got to see some cool stuff, it's amazing how much history we have out here in the Americas and the surrounding areas, and how people are focused on, just certain parts of the world. I really enjoy American history, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going around and decided to actually record myself and edit the videos, of course, on how to do this. All this stuff is new to me. This is my first time doing this, so of course there's going to be trials and errors, but I get to see where my starting point is. And my starting point was Fort Morris, was the first place I actually got to record my adventure. Not because I didn't have the opportunities before. I just decided to add this part of my, journey. And I have a lot of equipment that I have bought that I did want to use. So I'm going to be doing this more often. I'm going to go to another place next week, do the same thing. I'm going to go back to all the old places that I've been to before and record and do the same thing that I'm doing now, just to get a better feeling of this place. So yeah, this is Fort Morris in Sunbury, Georgia. Until next time, knowledge is power.